ICE must get out of Minnesota now.
Well, if democracy means anything at all, it means that this administration must be allowed to carry out the agenda the American people voted for.
What's going on, patriots? Welcome back. You just caught a glimpse of Bernie Sanders doing what he's been doing forever, recycling the same tired talking points like it's still 1975. Same outrage, same accusations, same fantasy worldview. But today's clip? This one is different, and it's absolute fire. Because stepping into the spotlight is Senator Eric Schmitt from Missouri, and he doesn't just push back on Bernie's narrative, he bulldozes it. What you're about to see is a full-on demolition of the radical socialist mindset that's taken over today's Democratic Party. And the timing couldn't be more important. We're at a crossroads as a country. On one side you've got politicians who treat law enforcement like villains and act like borders are optional. On the other you've got leaders like Schmitt who still believe laws matter, votes matter, and national sovereignty actually means something. Stick with me because Schmitt is about to deliver a lesson on what democracy really is, and spoiler alert, it looks nothing like what the left has been trying to sell us. Let's roll the clip.
Not and must never be about federal agents shooting American citizens down in cold blood, breaking down doors to arrest people, or sending 5-year-olds to detention centers, all in clear violation of our Constitution. That is what takes place in dictatorships, in authoritarian societies, where there is not a rule of law. It does not and it must not be allowed to take place in the United States or any democracy on earth. So let me be very clear. ICE must get out of Minnesota now. ICE must get out of Maine now. ICE must stop terrorizing the American people.
The senator from Missouri.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, we hear a lot of talk from the other side about democracy. Well, if democracy means anything at all, it means that this administration must be allowed to carry out the agenda the American people voted for. Enforcing our immigration laws, securing the border, and deporting immigrants who are here illegally. This is not a new concept, by the way. Democrat presidents for the last 20 years have done this. But the other side never had any intention of letting this happen. President Trump moved forward with his agenda. They were never going to let us enforce our immigration laws against those who had broken them. Why is that? Well, because mass migration is not just one policy preference among many for today's Democrat Party. It is the policy priority, the fundamental organizing principle of their entire agenda. It is the foundation of their platform and the final end of their worldview. Not one single Democrat has called on leftists in the streets to stop impeding law enforcement with their cars or to stop physically attacking law enforcement. Not a single one. They have zero interest in lowering the temperature. At this point, it's so obvious it almost feels silly to say. In Minnesota and here in D.C., Democrats are actively and intentionally adding fuel to the fire. The mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Frey, has claimed his city is invaded, under siege, occupied. The lieutenant governor of Minnesota, Peggy Flanagan, declared that our neighbors are being disappeared. It's just called kidnapping, and publicly called upon Americans to put your body on the line and not go silently into the night. The governor, Tim Walz, compared the ICE presence in Minnesota to a Nazi occupation and likened residents of Minneapolis to Anne Frank. On Monday, Walz published an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal declaring that the Trump administration's assault on Minnesota is a campaign of organized brutality against the people of our state. Just last week, he stood behind the metal gates of the governor's mansion with a bullhorn and told the crowd of protesters outside to go and cause trouble. These aren't unique examples. They are par for the course. Over the last month, we've heard similar things from just about every powerful Democrat in this country. I don't know what's in each and every one of their hearts. I don't know that. I don't know if they really believe that we're at war, or that ICE is the Gestapo, or that Minneapolis is under Nazi occupation. But whether or not they believe it, many of the people who hear them and listening to them do. And now, many of those people are taking these ideas to their final logical conclusion. And that's exactly what the people in power on the left actually want. They want the confrontations. They want the chaos. They want their conscious political strategy. That's what this is. Their conscious political strategy. They have decided that leaning in and ratcheting this up as far as it can go serves their political and ideological interests. So they're all in. And by the way, might I just point out, they're about ready to shut the government down again. They shut it down the first time because they wanted health care for illegal immigrants. Now they're willing to shut the government down, including FEMA funding and TSA funding, because they want to stop deportations of illegal immigrants. It is the single organizing principle of their party right now. Think about that for a moment. Really sit with this. Think about what it says about the kinds of people we're dealing with at this point. In a better era of American politics, we used to say things like, we all want what is best for the country. We just have different ideas about how to get there. When you hear statements like the ones that I just rattled off, it seems harder and harder to believe that right now.
Wow, that was a cold splash of reality. Eric Schmitt just accomplished more in a few minutes than Bernie Sanders has managed in decades of political grandstanding. Let's unpack why that exchange hit so hard. Bernie starts off in full meltdown mode, shaking fists, tossing out reckless accusations, portraying ICE as some rogue gang roaming the streets. Claims of kidnappings. Claims of shootings. No evidence. Just emotional firebombs meant to stir outrage. That's the strategy. Demonize law enforcement so the public stops trusting the people enforcing the law. But then Schmitt steps in and he doesn't miss. He zeroes in on the core issue immediately. Democratic legitimacy. He reminds everyone of something painfully simple. Americans voted for border security. They voted for immigration laws. Enforcing those laws isn't tyranny, it's literally how democracy works. Somewhere along the way the left decided that following the law is authoritarian. Schmitt flips that nonsense on its head. If elections matter, then policies voters supported matter too. You don't get to ignore them just because you don't like the outcome. And the hypocrisy call out? Brutal. Schmitt reminds the room that not long ago even Democratic presidents openly supported border enforcement. But today? He exposes the truth they don't want to admit. Mass illegal immigration isn't a failure of policy for the modern left. IT is the policy, it's the strategy. Change the country by changing the electorate no matter the cost. Cities destabilized. Communities overwhelmed. Even Democratic mayors admitting they're under siege. And still the left doubles down. The most shocking moment though was Schmitt calling out the disgraceful rhetoric coming out of Minnesota ICE compared to Nazis illegal immigrants. Compared to, and Frank, that's not just dishonest, it's offensive. IT cheapens real historical atrocities and spits in the face of legal immigrants who respected the process. Schmitt proved something important here. The chaos is intentional. The confrontation is the point. Government shutdowns don't scare them. Delayed FEMA aid doesn't bother them. TSA workers missing paychecks? Collateral damage. As long as illegal residents are protected, everything else is negotiable. Be why the end of it. Bernie looked cornered. Because facts don't care about theatrics, and Schmitt brought facts in bulk. Missouri should be proud. And honestly, the rest of the country should be paying attention. Now let me ask you, are you fired up too? Is Eric Schmitt a glimpse of where the party is headed? And what's your take on Bernie's wild claims about ICE? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit that like button if you're done with socialist talking points. Subscribe for more no-nonsense breakdowns of the fight for America's future. Until next time, stay sharp, stay loud, and stay free, United States.